my mother-in-law, she once went to a flea market and she came back with some old packages, baking powder from the 1920s. And in all our offices, we have a little package framed,
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Smack Hospitality Cast. We had the pleasure of welcoming Frank Marrenbach to the show, CEO of the Oetker Collection, and we talked to him about the current state of luxury hospitality, how luxury and its perception has changed over the past couple of years, and ways of expanding a super premium brand like the Oetker Collection. Enjoy. Frank, thank you very much for being here, for taking the time to be on the show. I'm going to start with a very easy question because it's something that came to my mind straight away when we asked you to come on the podcast. I've heard so many things about the state of luxury hotels. I've heard people who are saying they're on the verge of dying. I've heard people that say they're thriving in a way they've never done before. Give me your, as clearly an expert in luxury hospitality and luxury hotels, how are we doing as an industry?
Well, I guess, as you know, hospitality is really doing well.
Yeah.
And luxury hospitality is part of a larger tourism sector, and so we do pretty well.
Yeah.
And it is not astonishing, really, because luxury, in a way, is aspirational. Everybody wants it.
Yeah.
Now, there is no clear definition what luxury really is all about and to whom what it means to whom. So there's various degrees. And we see it change, that's for sure. What was once perceived as luxurious is not perceived as luxurious so much anymore. But globally speaking, we're doing pretty well.
Yeah. Tell me specifically about the Oetker Collection and what you guys are doing, obviously with phenomenal hotel products in a variety, but you guys do a little bit more than just operating a couple of beautiful properties by the seaside.
That's right. Well, that we belong to a pretty well-known German family, Oetker.
Yeah.
They come from baking powder.
Yeah.
This is the origin.
How often do you get that? How often do you get the question of how's the baking powder industry?
Yeah, often.
Yeah.
And I tell you, I'm pretty proud of it.
Yeah.
And in my office, my mother-in-law, she once went to a flea market and she came back with some old packages, baking powder from the 1920s. And in all our offices, we have a little package framed, because it's the roots of the company.
Yeah.
So, the Oetker family bought their first hotel in 1923.
Okay.
So it's not just something which popped up, like recently, and hospitality for, affluent people is a place where you should invest.
Yeah.
It's 1923. Now, to understand why it's so deeply embedded in the Oetker group, Mr. Oetker, Mrs. Oetker back then, she bought a hotel because she loved the place. She had a very, close relationship with Baden Baden, Brenner's Park.
Yeah.
And she bought a hotel. And I think it's important, why you do what you do. Of course, today when you look at it, it's a commercial entity within a larger company. But it always starts with that, strong passion. Maybe an overused word, right? Passion, like emotion, passion.
Yeah.
But it's the beginning of any business, you love something and you turn it into a business. So 1923. And then, hospitality was never really something looked at, it's like of strategic importance. Yeah. But little story maybe to see how it further evolved, In 1967, Mr. Oetker, was on a boat with a friend of his in the Mediterranean Sea, and he saw a place which today is known as Hotel du Cap Baden Baden.
Yeah.
He looked at it and he said, that's something, maybe one day I'd like to own. A year later, he got the information, it's for purchase, and he bought it. But he had never been inside when he bought it. And, this might come across as crazy or not very reasonable. But I had the pleasure of, meeting late Mr. Oetker many times. And I asked him one, he said, how could you have done something like this? He said, the place. It's the sea, it's the park, it's the trees, everything else can be renovated. You can put wallpaper, you can change it. But it's this genius loci, it's that very special place. I'll come back to that later, why in the segment we are in, the place is so important. I mean, you just don't have today any hotel with this kind of park right next to the sea. Yeah. And it's ultimately attractive. And then years later, of course, we bought the Bristol in Paris, and then a wonderful property in Provence, Château Saint-Martin. And then only in 2010, and I joined the company in 97, we decided maybe we need to really do some more, give it perspective. Why? First, we saw great market opportunities. And we saw that our guests love our hotels. They come back often. We have a lot of regular guests. Yeah. Then too often we saw young talents leaving because we couldn't retain them. We just had 4 hotels. Yeah. And, whenever they then wanted to move to the next level and there was no vacancy, they left and they went to the competition. And also for us as the hoteliers, we wanted something with perspective. Yeah. And this is when we created Oetker Collection. Mind you, the term collection was not known in 2010. Yeah. Yeah. Now we understand, it represents an idea of hospitality, a certain kind of hotel, let's say a group, but a collection because, coming back to Mr. Oetker, a very knowledgeable entrepreneur collected hotels, which, by the way, made good economic sense after all. Yeah. This is the little story of Oetker Collection. And, fast forward 2020, we have these 9 wonderful masterpiece hotels, as we call them. Yeah.
If you look at the masterpieces, as you say, how has the luxury hospitality industry since your time from 1997, as you said, you joined until today, how has it progressed and how have you seen it progress? Because I think briefly before we started the recording, we already talked about, digitization is all of a sudden there. You've talked about employees that all of a sudden, there's words in there like work-life balance was 15, 20 years ago. Nobody really knew what that was all about. How has that luxury transformed from an operational side, whereas you already said that obviously the guest thinks luxury is something different now than it was at the time?
Well, I guess, when I look back, my own career and that, it's a long time now. For me, it's 30 plus years. Yeah. When I started, luxury hotels, first of all, there were not a lot. Yeah. I mean, there were much less. And the crowd, the people who, stayed at these hotels was much smaller. It was very formal. It was entrenched in protocol. It was stiff at certain times, So it was good, great if you want, but it was, as I said, very, very classic, tuxedos for the ones in the evening to wear, morning suit, morning cut, as you say in the morning. And it was like a theater in a way. Oh. By the way, I do believe today it's also a theater,
but a different
it
play.
Has evolved. There was no question that people wore a tie when you went to a restaurant. Sometimes you weren't even allowed. Could you believe it? It's today. It must come across like a joke, but even at Brenner's Park until the late 90s, in the evening at least, you had to wear a tie. Yeah. Hierarchies were very strong, the managing director, the hotel manager, the head of departments, it was really very high. It's like layers, 10, 15 layers. So all this connected, it was a very different world. And today you see it very, it has totally changed. I mean, look at food and beverage concepts. You know, it's nothing like the hotel restaurant, like the big Speisesaal, as we say. The clothing is different. You know, the way you speak with guests is different. What they seek, you know, it has become much more international. A lot of younger, many younger, you know, a lot of young people come as well. It was more back then for people 40 and above, you know, from a certain financial background. So no comparison. But we have 20 times as many hotels today as we had, 30 years ago.
And how, with your 22 years at Brenner's Park and Oetker and Mrs. Oetker buying it nearly 100 years ago, how did you see the Brenner's Park especially evolve over, let's say, the last 20 years? And is it always the same focus? Was it always luxury, of course, as the main goal, but has the focus of your guests changed?
Well, it has totally changed. In one sense particular, 20 plus years ago, we had, you know, a lot of Stammgäste, as we say in German, right? The regular guests. They came every year for a month. Would you believe it? 4 weeks, you know, staying the whole summer, requesting the same table, you know, the same daybed in the park. So it was really this, you know, it was like one family. All the guests knew each other. It was like a club. And so that, of course, has totally gone away. People now travel to all places. And of course, you know, we have a lot of regular guests, but people staying 4 weeks, no. Rarely. Then came, you know, in the late 90s, the spa movement. You know, Brenner's, by the way, was one of the first hotels who added the word spa to it. Interestingly, it was contested by, the Spa Monopol, which is a company which produces mineral water, and there was a legal,
discussion
debate about, is Spa a town or is Spa what we understand as wellness? Believe it, today nobody would really discuss this anymore. But the introduction of Spa, you know, changed one element, which was entertainment. You know, people wanted to do more than just come to the hotel, eat, wine and dine. You know, have a little stroll in the park. You know, and Spa Wellness had introduced a very different idea to that luxury hotel. We added, today we have a large component is medical services, checkup programs, nutrition programs, new reasons to go and stay at hotels, just then spend a few days and relax. So the Speisesaal vanished. We had 160 seat restaurant. Unbelievable, So, I mean, why would you today, and like this one big, huge room, this has totally changed. We turned it into smaller restaurants, more variety.
How many outlets do you have today?
4.
4 outlets.
Yeah. By the way, back then everybody ate at the hotel, breakfast, lunch, dinner. Today, I mean, who has 3 meals per day?
3 full meals.
3 full meals. And I mean, what's the schedule? You have a pretty good day breakfast, if you stay at a good hotel and you're not engaged in business appointments, you wake up later, have a great the buffet breakfast. By the way, the return of a la carte breakfast is something too. Sometimes people say, we've seen so many buffets, why don't you bring me what I want? So to 2 meals, 2.5 meals, that was the beginning. This is how it changed,
The collection as a whole, Frank, if you don't mind me saying so, is probably one of a kind in the world today, and yet you're not the only hotel company, obviously, who thinks they are very good in luxury hotels. You've said already the amount of 5-star properties has exploded. There's companies that focus on 5-star hotels in the city. There's companies that focus in the countryside, and so on and so forth. Has that helped, in your subjective opinion, has that helped the understanding of luxury, or has it become something that's almost too available for it to still be something special?
Well, that's a very good question. I guess, generally speaking, it has helped.
Yeah.
Because what you need to look at is also the correlation between, growth of demand and offer. Yeah. Okay. I think, if I'm not mistaken, 2 years ago, according to a travel organization, 1.2 billion people traveled. It's scheduled to be 1.8 billion 2030. So that's important, to answer this question. Has it helped that more hotels in the luxury space have appeared? So I would say yes, because lots of them are very different. I know a lot of great brands I admire, so if you take Aman, great company. So you have a Dorchester Collection. I mean, there's good competitors around, but there's more people who want to have it. Yeah, yeah. So the question is always, how different can you be? And I would never use one word which people easily use, but which is maybe not achievable, is unique. As human beings, us, we are unique. Yeah. But let's face it, a car, a hotel, anything cannot be unique. What it should and can be, in particular in the luxury space, is the notion of rarity. Right? Yeah. It's not there's not 30 Lubristalls in Paris.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Or I don't know. There's not 25 Eden Rocks and St. Bart's. And by the way, there's only one St. Bart's. Now, I'm giving you this explanation to also sharing with you how we look at it. You know what a differentiator can be. And differentiator today, of course, is always, a combination of the obvious things. It's the location. But look at location as such. London. Is London a good location? It's a rhetorical question. Yeah, I guess, you could say this is an attractive destination for a lot of people to go. Yeah. So let's go to London. So where should we be? And the Oetker Collection, the way we look at hotels and where we want to be, it's the Golden Triangle. It's Knightsbridge, it's Mayfair. And so you want to be in this micro location. Why? Because I can ascertain you, if you have your hotel only a mile away, maybe you have 40% less rate. It's interesting. So you have to be, in the sweet spot of an already attractive location. And then you have to come up with a compelling architecture. And then you have to come up with, suitable concepts. And then you have to attract good people who live this. Because the answer, why is this hotel a little bit better? It's hard to detect. And then what I realized over time, you have to be focused. Do not be everybody's darling. Yeah. I can't appeal to everybody. By the way, appealing to everybody, like us human beings, you always be a very boring guy. Because, if you don't have, a certain, conviction and a good attitude, then nobody will remember you. And so it is with hotels. Yeah. So when you put this together, you realize, well, maybe it's not that easy because other people want it too. Yeah. So the ability to get there, to secure a place, to own a place, to attract the people, that makes it special. And because it's rare, it's sought after.
Yourself now saying rarity is very, very important, and having now changed just last month from being a CEO of the Oetker Collection and the director of the Brenner's Park. How is it changing? How's the strategy of Oetker Collection changing, or what is your goals in the future that you said now I need to focus completely on the Oetker Collection? Do you want to expand? And if you want to expand, how will you keep that level of rarity, or how will you choose the places where you're going to open the next Brenner's Park or the next Capitan Rock?
By the way, there will be no Brenner's Park next. There will be no Hotel du Cap next. This is, by the way, the big differentiator, because every single time, which is cumbersome, we can't scale the way other companies do, because you always create something a one-off piece.
Yep.
And this one-off piece, takes a lot of time and work, but it's because, it's only there once. People go. Nobody will ask you if you say, I just came back from Hotel du Cap. Which one? Nobody would say, I stayed at Brenner's, and said, which one? So just for this point. So the reason, I need to talk to you a little bit about what I believe will stay and what will maybe go. Stay, and this is the reason why I, after 10 years of doing both, I decided to focus on Oetker Collection. Wonderful hotels need wonderful hosts. And let's together, think about what a host is, because there is a fundamental difference between a super service provider and a host. And, let's say next Friday, you're invited by friends of yours, you go to their place, you have your bottle of wine with you as a little, thank you. Your friend opens the doors, there's other people. And 5-6 hours later, you leave. And you leave with the thought, wow, what an evening. I mean, fantastic. And it's certainly not because you drank 10 bottles of wine, but it's certainly because the host exactly thought about putting together good, interesting people. Thought about, maybe if there is a table assignment, who sits next to each other. Maybe the host broke all the rules because he realized that the rules should not be applied for you tonight. But he has a very good consciousness of how to, create something for his guests. Why did I now change to the sole responsibility of Oetker Collection? Because over time I also realized I can't play this role anymore at Brenner's Park. Brenner's deserves a host, and due to time constraints I couldn't do it anymore. And Oetker Collection deserves a full-time CEO. So this is one of the reasons, why I changed. Of course, there is a public debate on growth, Growth is good.
Yep.
We need growth. For us, it means, of course, we have 9 hotels today, that we want to be present in the places where our guests love to go. These are, the big cities, clearly, because they're already big, but I'm absolutely certain that they will grow. Cities, look at Berlin, they attract talent. People go, they work. They, create their own little fortune. They have the means, they go out, they want to have fun, they want to stay somewhere. And so therefore, it's our strategy, of course, to be in cities like Rome, New York, Los Angeles. Later, not now, Asia, of course, Singapore, Shanghai, Tokyo. This is where we want to go. And it's, coming back to the masterpiece idea, it's really a full-time job. Maybe it's interesting why we call it masterpiece.
Yeah, tell us.
Why is that? Because when we founded the company, we were looking for, Oetker Collection. We need to explain what it is. So we thought the obvious ones were luxury hotels, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. And then one, team member said, no, it's a little bit like the Mona Lisa, right? The hotels we have. There's only one, and you go to the Louvre, have a look at it. And it's they're all masterpieces in their own rights. This is how it started. Now, I want to be humble enough not to say we are the Mona Lisa, but the idea to have always a single hero put together, created this individuality together notion of Oetker Collection, and that makes it special.
And how does it fit? I mean, I had the huge privilege to be able to stay once in a previous Oetker Collection property in Palais Namaskar,
Right.
in Marrakesh, which was for me definitely one of the most memorable experiences. How come Palais Namaskar is not part of the Oetker Collection anymore, and how do you communicate that to your guests, or how do you communicate that also internally, that you have only, as you say, masterpieces, but at some point maybe a masterpiece is not a masterpiece anymore? How can you share us your thought process, why actually this happened, and how that fits in your communication?
Palais Namaskar was sold. You know, we didn't own it. It was sold after a few years to a new owner who wanted to have a 4-star plus concept, which doesn't work for us. That's the simple reason. And therefore we separated, you know, and we let go Palais Namaskar. Because, you know, we cannot accommodate anything but, you know, a 5-star plus hotel. This is the single reason. Now, we own 4 of our hotels, you know, Brenner's, Hotel du Cap, Le Bristol, Château Saint-Martin. We co-own Eden Rock St. Bart's. So, you know, wherever we can, you know, that's maybe also the learning, you know, when we signed the contract of Palais Namaskar early 2012. It was our first hotel, you know, which we managed. And today, of course, we, you know, would have a very close look, you know, what an ownership structure, is it aligned with our thinking, and how likely is it that due to ownership change also, you know, the way the hotel should be run changes. That's a learning, you know, so therefore no Palais Namaskar anymore.
If you look at the, again on a more global perspective, Frank, if you look at what you've said in terms of, you know, selecting and growth, how tricky is it for you to select exactly what you've described? Because it sounds like, with all due respect to some of the big brands, but you put a lot more thought process and you know, trying to distinguish, can this work with our values? Can this work with our product? Can this work with our masterpiece idea? Then let's say selecting the next, I'm not going to say brand now because I'll get into big trouble, but selecting the next big 5-star hotel of a brand that already has 150 5-star hotels.
You know, first of all, I have a lot of respect for, you know, the big brands, and they have a different strategy. So if I would run, you know, a big mono brand, I would look at it differently too. Now, we are first and foremost still a family-owned company. You know, our shareholders, the Oetker family, they also want to be, you know, associated with hotels which are in harmony with their own understanding of good hotel keeping. I guess we sort of approach it a little bit like maybe Mr. Oetker, Rudolf August Oetker, in, you know, the decades before, he sensed a place, he tried to read a place, you know, and it has to be appealing to us, not for us, but it has to appeal to us in a way that we can, you know, sense that our guests would like to be there. I guess that's the way, you know, you go, you scout, you have a look, you know, you feel, and I mean, there is sometimes it's, you know, you can't only come with, you know, like analysis on destinations. Of course, we read them too, you know, clearly, but then again, we need to go, it's a good place. Does it feel well? Is there a great architecture, or is it a new build? And this is also intuition. You know, this is how we do it.
And if you look at the destinations, and you've mentioned some of the destinations already, and you say that obviously you look at where your guests that you currently have in your properties, where they like to go. Has that changed? Have the destinations changed in the sense that, you know, some of the destinations you mentioned, Rome, Los Angeles, you know, you've talked about London briefly already and said, well, it's you know, there's a triangle with where we could imagine, but otherwise it would probably be complicated. How likely are these destinations to change for your guests, or are your guests more accustomed to reoccurring destinations? In your opinion, I realize there's probably no perfect answer to this.
Well, if you engage in a destination, you don't engage for, let's say, 24 months.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's hot today might be not so hot
Might be
tomorrow.
slightly cooler.
So we have to have some degree of, sustainability.
Yeah.
But clearly, there are new places now which are evolving. I'm named the classical ones, which we believe we should be in because, Rome will remain an attractive city for the many decades to come. Yeah. Clearly. So is New York. So is LA. And but of course there are places which take Uruguay. There's places which all of a sudden come up as intriguing new places.
Can you give one or two examples in your opinion?
Yeah. Well, you can take, for instance, South Korea. South Korea is super interesting destination. It's very creative. A lot of young people there. A lot of companies. South Korea is really super interesting. Take the whole of Scandinavia. Some remote places in Finland, Sweden. Hotels on ice. Really just very remote. The rediscoveries take Chichester, Sussex, the southern parts of the London region, which are quite beautiful in my understanding. Take Mongolia. There's interesting places. Iceland, few years, 10 years ago, who went to Iceland?
If you didn't have to go.
Exactly. So there's, but for us, we need, look, as a company, we can't make a destination. We're too small.
Yeah.
We can't put a destination on a map. Yeah. There is this these powerful big brands. They can do it. Sao Paulo, for instance, that's pretty much a discovery because Sao Paulo used to be, like big business, 22 million people, not so safe, lots of traffic, But I can ascertain you, Sao Paulo is a wonderful city. Art, food, the scene is wonderful. There's a vibrancy, unbelievable. So I didn't have Sao Paulo on my map 10 years ago. Yeah.
Taking a step back from Oetker Collection, and you mentioned also, but going back to Brenner's Park, you mentioned before that also you have now more medical treatments also at your hotels. So this is, of course, the topic of medical tourism or Chinese travelers who travel more. What are for you the most important tourism trends or travel trends, especially for the luxury segment?
Yeah. Multi-general travel, skip-gen travel, very interesting. The grandparents taking the grandchildren because the middle generation has to work a lot. And the grandparents, they want to spend quality time with, the little ones. Yeah. And that's interesting to see, but it's also challenging us because, the generation of the grandparents and the grandchildren, they want to do, different things. Multi-generational travel, very strong. We created masterpiece estates, as you know. Masterpiece estates are significant pieces of real estate, big private homes sitting on huge pieces of land, where generations can spend long weekend together, active or passive. You can go hunting if you want, you can go scuba diving, you can, go hiking, you spend the evening together, you eat together, everybody has its own room, so this is, very...
Is that the pendant to the vacation home in the luxury segment?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. You can play, sounds banal, but, you can play table tennis together, because everybody can play table tennis, but the time together is so valuable, okay? But you need spaces and proposals which accommodate the needs of 3 generations. Then they have a good time, because if you choose a place like this and you come from being busy, you still, interestingly, want to remain busy. Okay, there's no fun in just sitting still and doing nothing. All right.
Especially in the generation of our smartphones.
Absolutely. So multi-generational travel is for us one of the most meaningful trends. Then the bleisure component. Yeah, cities are not only for business, and I love it too. My most favorite way of spending weekends with my wife is we go to a nice city. Where you have that vacation, but you have a lot of things to do. Yeah. So that's very good, because our hotels, take a Bostol in Paris or the Lanesborough in London, the companies don't pay these rates anymore. So you pay, I don't know, in London maybe a good corporate guy pays £400. We are at 1,000. So we need people who go also for leisure purposes. Yeah. So that's the second trend, and so that is most meaningful for us.
How, if you look ahead a little bit, and obviously you've said this a little bit already, that there's luxury has grown as a segment. There's different types of luxury. The upper class maybe in Europe, the middle class in China is clearly an aspect, and Asia as a whole is clearly an aspect in this. How easy has it been accommodating for the luxury industry different regions? The Europeans, the Asians, clearly the Americans are still in there. The Eastern European travelers. How easy is that? You've said you don't want to please anyone, and probably you can't. Well, at least not with most hotels. How complicated is that?
Diversity is beautiful, but it's very hard to manage.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you have guests from all over the world, with different expectations, different habits, it's not easy to, keep your place in harmony. It's challenging for our team members too. You have to be pretty knowledgeable of how to address these, various, guests. They behave differently. Sometimes also you see that guests, among themselves, sometimes it's not always compatible. Yeah. Okay, so I guess that's one of the components we need to really pay a lot of attention and train our team people. It's difficult to manage diversity on a daily level, on a daily basis.
Tell me, Frank, we haven't talked about digitalization at all. Clearly a topic that is close to our hearts.
The digital guys.
Yeah, that's exactly. Tell me your very own perspective on the luxury industry. I realize that obviously in the budget hotels, digitization can you can automize a lot and so on and so forth. Is automation really something that you're even looking for in the luxury industry? Because I imagine you've said this many times now since we've been recording this. You always will have to somewhat focus on the people and delivering service, which, with all due respect, but the robots cannot do quite yet. Yeah,
not yet.
Not yet. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and yet I'm sure your distribution has changed a little bit as well. You had to address transporting emotions and experiences over digital media. Give me your opinion on how luxury and digitization has evolved over the past couple of years.
I think it's a perfect couple. Yeah. Because even in particular for smaller companies like ours, because never ever it has been easier for a fairly reasonable amount to create good visibility. I mean, remember, 20 years ago, you had to run significant ad campaigns to create visibility, and that was only for the ones who had deep pockets, not for small companies like ours. Today, much easier. Not easy, but it is easier to create if you have a compelling story. And I mean, luxury, the subjects of luxury, I mean, you can visualize them so nicely that people like to look at it, So therefore, if the aesthetics, which we have, and the stories we can tell, I guess it's made for each other. And I would even go so far, if you do not really engage there, people will not find you. They will not know that you're around, I mean, how can I reach anybody in today Asia, and talk to him or her about, I don't know, let's say Jambi Bay Island. what should I do? Should I send a brochure to whom? There is no post box anymore, there's nothing I can do. So I think it's one of the biggest opportunities for us in the luxury segment.
And how do you reach your guests? What are your distribution channels, your marketing channels? Do you have a lot of direct bookings? You said before, back in the days, you had loyalty, people came every year for a month. How does your distribution mix or marketing mix look today?
90% is digital. I mean, we have one single printed piece, which is our, Eden Bean magazine. It's what sits in the rooms and is sent to the guests, because you have to have something tangible, But even there, it's about talking, telling stories about what we do. The rest is purely digital, of course, So today, we have the team doing it is 5 people in Paris. With sales, marketing, communication is in Paris. The financial holding is in Baden Baden, but they do nothing but, making sure that the hotels come across nicely and the content is in harmony of what we want to be perceived as. Okay, so, and on each property level, it's today the digital marketing manager. Most of the time, these people sit on the executive committees of us. Even for me, if I have something to say, well, I don't write letters anymore. Okay? So maybe to guests, before, but so it is. Social media is extremely important, of course. It was Facebook, still is to a certain degree. Instagram, of course, no surprise to none of us, is the number one, channel for us to convey, to stimulate interest, and of course, everything else, you book a table online today, 80% of the guests book online. Yes, we have still a lot of guests calling us, making a reservation, this is significant for us. But in terms of marketing, this is all digital. Videos is important, 3D, some. I mean, what's the idea is, how can I get across the emotion which we believe we create at our places, and that is what you need to do. The old idea about segmentation, like classical segmentation, the individual traveler. This has all changed. Today it's the buyer personas concept. You try to appeal to a persona and you talk to him in stories and you try to feel and understand what's the tonality, the pictures, the words which come across. Otherwise you're overlooked. And that has and it's science, it's complicated. This is not, us taking a picture, and just pushing it through Instagram. It's not. This is a business. You have to think about it.
Do you bring that also, this personalization persona, just in the marketing, or do you also transfer that into the customer journey on property or after their stay? Do you use digital tools for that, or is it a lot of personal and the staff knows which guest comes and he has everything in his head and gives the best service via his own experience?
Look, also, I guess common knowledge today is throughout your touch points, it has to be, one good journey. So there is digital touch points, you land on the website, you want to have that good experience. The booking process has to be easy today. I mean, you want to order something, a book, for instance, it's a one click. We can't do it in a one click. So we have not yet, but we have to go to this. It has to be easy, it has to be intriguing. When you, for instance, book a very nice, room at a wonderful, newly renovated Eden Rocks and Barts, today when we send you the proposal, it's colorful, it's fun, it's sexy, and so that we also whet your appetite, of course. And then the touch point on premises is, of course, ultimately is also very important, So it has to be in harmony, and every touch point has to be extremely appealing, and represent what you think the hotel should be like.
In a lot of people, especially here, we are at the German Hotel Congress. They, in the panel before, they were saying, okay, people need to have a bit more of that startup mentality, try and fail. You can't always have a zero mistake policy. But how can you connect this kind of try and fail attitude and mentality in the luxury segment, where everything always needs to be perfect, after my understanding?
I guess we need to adapt this thinking, but I'm absolutely convinced that and I needed to learn a lot. I'm 53. I'm a senior guy. Okay, so my biggest learning came from new colleagues of ours within the Oetker Group, Oetker Digital. So we have, very creative young people like yourself, and they build businesses from scratch. Now, what have I learned from them is you come up with an idea, you test immediately, even if it's not like finished, right? You listen to your guests actively. You don't just ask, do you like it? You would ask, what does it do? To you. So, and the thinking, this is, you don't sit in your, closed shop anymore, and then you come up with something, and then you install it, and you build it, and then you hope that it's going to be okay. This iteration, between we have an idea, speaking to your customers, to your guests, and not asking, do you like it, but, is this relevant to you? This is what has changed my thinking. The buyer persona concept, which then, leads to that. Yeah. This is a very different approach of building businesses today. And I can I can strongly recommend. That is what we hoteliers, we will come from very traditional business model. And what will prevail is we want to make guests very, very happy in 10 years, in 15 years, in 20 years, you know. But the way we create things and engage with guests in the making already has totally changed.
How easy was that transition, Frank, towards influencing people digitally for the luxury industry, and also specifically for you guys at Oetker? Because I imagine coming from a very classic approach, coming from a very classic strategy in terms of what you did in your marketing, especially for the luxury industry and companies like yours, it must have been difficult to keep that perfection in your communications in a field that was essentially new at the time, because we all knew, okay, we roughly knew how Facebook worked, and we were able to upload a couple of pictures, but the effect and the consequences certain decisions online have cannot have been apparent to you the first time you did it.
No. Well, but I guess, look, this is if you have an open mind, and every business leader is curious, is not afraid of taking certain risks, and there is some trial and error, and you do something. I mean, we never looked at it like, let's post pictures. Yeah. I mean, we did not do so before. Yeah. For me, the digital space, is you have to give some thought, and why would you post this picture? Yeah. And what's the story behind? And by the way, when you describe it, do you do it in your own tonality? We are grand hotels, very nice hotels. Our clients are hardly the 18 years old. Sure. Yeah. So I'm not talking to the 18-year-old. I don't have to appeal first and foremost to the 18. But maybe, when somebody gets 25 and older, I better make sure that I'm not you're around. Exactly, because this is the notion, and we go back to the beginning of the interview, right? That then like 20 plus years, 45 years, and then you started to 40 years to start going to these hotels. This is over. Today you have a lot of very, not only because they are rich in a narrow sense, but people who like experiences, and they would say, listen, a certain part of my budget, I spend on vacation. Yeah. And I don't want to have my hotels only filled with people of my generation, because I also want to have other generations around me. Yeah. So in this sense, there was a lot of trial and error, but of course, over time you see what people like. What's the engagement rate? How much do people look at? Does it eventually lead to sales? What are the topics people like to talk about? And that is not rocket science. Come on. I mean, we are good hotel keepers. We're good restaurateurs. This is about food, beverage. This is about good music. This is about art. This is about good sleeping. This is about good people. And this is what we try to convey.
You just mentioned a word that I just want to briefly catch your opinion on as well, and that's the idea of budget. In terms of the digital world, how early did you start assigning a budget to all digital marketing, to the digital world? Because I know for a fact that there's still 5-star plus hotel companies that have a marketing budget, but what percentage gets spent on digital and what gets spent on offline material, they couldn't really tell you.
Yeah,
I imagine you're a step ahead of that.
Well, I hope we are at least, doing okay here.
Later,
At least for the podcast.
No, but I can tell you exactly 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Because 10 years ago, we engaged our first digital marketing manager. Because beforehand, everybody did something, like, you have an iPhone? Right, you can take pictures. Why don't you do something for the hotel, But maybe that was also normal, I mean, it's like in the old days, when somebody had a computer, he was looked at as a computer,
as a digital
guy,
expert.
But 10 years ago, we engaged somebody who did nothing but this. Okay, and then slowly we shifted also some budgets from areas, take print for instance, and we moved them then to the digital space. Yeah. And today we have, in Paris we have 5 people. Yeah. They just do this, from morning to down. They think about the possibilities. How can we reach the right crowd through digital ideas, right? And it's not the email anymore. Yes, this is also like if I speak to my sons, I said, you still write emails. Yeah, I do. All right, but it's not how you get to your clientele anymore. Yeah.
Do you have a WhatsApp group with people from your staff?
Yes,
You do,
of course. Yeah? Of course. We have. By the way, that's quite interesting. A year and a half ago, I realized how can I reach my team members? Yeah. We are a small company, but we have 3,000 people. Yeah. And good hoteliers. So how can I talk to them? Who reads my email? I hope
somebody eventually.
But, who has? Not everybody has an email address. You go to the Caribbean. Not everybody has an email address, but everybody has an iPhone. So we created, something which looks like Facebook. Where we all generate content. Yeah. And today, if I want to speak to my team members, I either create a video, and I talk about things which I've short, or I convey pictures. By the way, I also engage. I look at the pictures. I like them. I comment them. And today we have 1,800 of our team members on this platform, and this is great. And take New Year's Eve. How can I talk to all my team members and thanking them for their fabulous engagement?
Easiest way.
Is
1 minute video.
Yeah. Is there something at the moment which you are implementing or working on, where you would like to, especially in a digital sense, change or add to a specific property or for the whole collection?
Well, that's a larger topic, because what is the IT infrastructure going to be in the next years? And that's extremely complicated because now we need to look at GDS, all booking channels, all the social media channels. You have a look, how do we, all the invoices we get, how are they processed? This is big. And we now have one single person in our company. Since 8 months, he only looks at that. We constantly looking, together with vendors, what can be the best structure. Because the danger is, if I invest, because it's always very expensive and I can't get out of it without other expenses. It takes a lot to remove a software system which is deeply embedded in your company. So this is a lot of...
So we could say you have a real digital DNA embedded into the Oetker's collection.
Absolutely. And if you want maybe, a more precise or an example, I truly believe, I want to know what our guests think. So, the classical guest surveys, some 100 years ago. Yes, yeah. 100 years ago, they were printed, on your, bed cover and, and then you filled it in or not, And then today you're bothered, often with, these questionnaires. But what I want to know is what makes you tick, okay? And I guess today there is new ways of engaging with guests. Technology allows it to, that depending how you answer, to understand better why you answer and to your own benefit, find out what you really, want and what we should do. And I guess that there's enormous potential in how to engage with guests to better understand their needs and then to improve your product, and this loop, and make it better. And that's, we're looking at, a solution which we beta test now in order to, have a more profound understanding, why guests stay with us and what they want.
Frank, just like that, 1 hour has passed.
Oh, so, wow. God.
Thank you.
Sorry.
That's okay. Thank you very much. It's been very, very inspirational. Thank you very much for your time. We have a little tradition on this podcast.
All right.
And we
Sing a song?
Not quite close. Not quite. We have 3 questions that we ask everybody at the end of the podcast with the request for a very honest 3 answers. And if you don't mind, I will fire straight away. My favorite part about hospitality is...
people.
The last trip I took was to
Jambi Bay Island, Antigua.
And the most memorable part of that trip?
Meeting our barkeeper who's there since 40 years and she's just a gem.
And the next big thing about hospitality is?
People.
We got him. Frank, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
If I would know.
Thanks very much. Thank you. That's it for this episode, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. As always, don't forget to check out what there is to know about Smack at smack.media or on our YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, or Facebook accounts. We'll see you next time.